Now, I want to focus on just a concrete example of one assumption that controls evolutionary thinking today. And it's a false assumption. The absence of fossils of a creature in a particular geological formation is evidence of the non-existence of that creature when that sedimentary layer was deposited. So let me illustrate. People will see a diagram like this in the school textbooks, in science museums, natural history museums, and it shows the evolutionary view of the history of life, starting with simple bottom-dwelling sea creatures up through fish and amphibians, reptiles, eventually mammals and people. And they say, well, different creatures lived at different times because we don't find the fossils, for example, of dinosaurs way down here at the bottom. There's a fish in the fossil record called the coelacanth. It was only found in the rock layers, the highest rock layer that the dinosaurs went extinct with. So they said, well, the coelacanth went extinct with the dinosaurs. Because above those layers, no coelacanth fossils. They said that until 1938 when they found the coelacanth swimming off the coast of Madagascar. And when they compared the living fish to the fossil, it was virtually identical.
He hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed in supposedly 65 million years. But nobody believes it re-evolved into existence after being extinct.
It's been around.
It's been around, but there's no fossil evidence that it was.
100 million years worth of presumed sediment deposition. And the coelacanth just stays the same. There's slight changes, you know, like the wolves change slightly and everything changes a little bit. But basically the changes didn't change it from a coelacanth to something else. They just changed it into a slightly different coelacanth.
Another example is the Wallamai pine. It's a tree that was only known from the fossil record, thought to have gone extinct 150 million years ago, rediscovered living in 1994. And when they compared the living tree with the fossil, it was virtually identical. Again, no fossil change.
The Great Barrier Reef, located several miles off the coast of northeastern Australia, is the world's largest reef system, stretching over 1,000 miles, and is known for its corals and sponges. Dr. Werner dove here, looking for a match to a fossil coral he had seen at the Carnegie Museum. Before reaching his destination, this particular dive produced a treat. Dr. Werner was greeted by a giant 4-foot humphead Maori wrasse, who surprisingly performed a dance with this reef explorer. After this exhilarating encounter, his search continued for a modern coral to match this fossil exhibited at the Carnegie Museum. He eventually was successful. Although the fossil, with its round shape and mouth-like slit opening, was broken, the similarities between the living mushroom coral and the fossil were remarkable. But again, the dinosaur-era fossil was given a different genus and species name. Dr. Werner found fossilized examples of all of the major invertebrate groups, or phyla, living today in the dinosaur rock layers.
I can give you another example the other way. Here we have a picture of a fossil from a rock layer supposedly 190 million years old. Looks exactly like a living horseshoe crab today. And originally the evolutionists said it evolved into existence about 345 million years ago because that was the lowest rock layer where they found it. And then just recently they found it in rocks that they say are 445 million years old. So then they have to change their theory. Oh, it actually evolved into existence much earlier than we previously thought.
How do living things remain unchanged over supposed hundreds of millions of years if evolution has changed worms into humans in the same time frame? Professor Gould wrote the maintenance of stability within species must be considered as a major evolutionary problem.
Living fossils.
Living fossils. And there's a web link there. Yeah, you can see it on the screen there, creation.com/living fossils. But the mutation rates in those things that apparently don't change according to this answer, the supposed answer that came in, the mutations don't stop.
Right.
I mean, the thing is going to keep, the DNA in this thing is going to keep mutating, and all of the other organisms around it in that environment were evolving. They were changing according to evolution theory. So it doesn't answer the question.
The environment doesn't change the mutation rate, right?
Right.
The DNA
Yeah.
is still going to replicate, and it's still going to have random chance accidents. That's what a mutation is. So the environment's not going to prevent that from happening. So random chance accidents are going to happen in the DNA of these creatures, whether or not their environment changes or not.
Right. In the evolutionary scenario, that should lead to changes in living things, all living things. There shouldn't be any stasis.
Exactly. And by the way, everything around that creature doesn't necessarily mean that it's, if the environment's perhaps not changing that much, what about the other creatures that are coming in and out of the environment? What about things like bacteria in that environment? I mean, this is really not a very good argument because evolutionists say that there were vast changes in environments over the millions of years. So to assign any one area on the planet an environment that just simply does not change so that the creatures in that area did not change.
And then mutations somehow stop producing any change.
Yes.
It's not a very good answer.
Yeah, that's
All
right.
We had another answer come in. Answer number 2, worms didn't change into humans. We still have worms today. Rather, worms and humans have a common ancestor if you go back far enough. You're laughing already.
Yeah, because who cares? That's not an answer to the question that we posed, which was, why are there...
Why do they stay the same? Why do we have living fossils?
Right.
Why do we have that term, living fossil?
As a matter of fact, now, I guess to answer the question, there is an article on our website where some evolutionists actually say that we came from worms, by the way. So leading evolutionists are saying we came from worms, and you can check that out, creation.com/evolution-in-action-or-evolution-inaction. Okay? But, yeah, that's really nice and short. But what are some of the evolutionary responses? Luck, chance, their habitat hasn't changed. In the case of the coelacanth, the cockroach that has survived for 250 million years demonstrates the key to success is to be abundant and live everywhere. Well, isn't that what everything wants to do? Long generation times, at least 15 years for the tuatara lizard. But this can't apply to rapidly reproducing but unchanging cockroaches, archaeobacteria, which multiply in minutes, yet evolutionists are believed to have been on Earth for 3.5 billion years. So these don't really hold water.
Yeah, the article Zoologist says this. Some biologists marvel that there is any evolution at all, considering the possible pitfalls of change. She quotes the Yale paleontologist Elizabeth Verba saying that, quote, organisms are so complex that it is hard to change one aspect without wrecking everything else.
Well, they're recognizing that point anyway.
Yeah.
They really don't have a good answer.
No,
basically.
they don't.
The New Scientist article leaves the problem unresolved. All this leaves a rather complicated picture. Be general or specialized. Live fast or slow. Keep it simple or don't. Be in the right place at the right time. If all else fails, try becoming a super species blessed with a physiology that can withstand anything. What kind of answer is this?
It's a non-answer.
In a scientific magazine. Clearly, living fossils present a major problem for evolution, and evolutionists are struggling to make sense of these discoveries.
Yeah, that sounds like grasping at straws, right? It could be this or it could be
anything.
this. It could be anything.
One of the exciting bits of information that's coming out now, one of the students here, Tom Stidham, has been going through our collections from the late Cretaceous, looking for the remains of birds. And what they're finding is that there is at that time, in the late Cretaceous, quite a diversity of modern groups of birds. Tom has just had a little article published in Nature in which he describes a late Cretaceous parrot. There are more pieces of information out there that are now being described in papers that are being written or in review. showing that other kinds of modern birds were present in the late Cretaceous.
Others reported finding ducks, loons, flamingos with dinosaurs. This was utterly amazing. And others reported finding shrew-like animals, squirrel-like animals, platypus-like mammals, and other mammals in the dinosaur rock layers.
He says at the dinosaur dig site, scientists found many unusual extinct mammal forms. But they've also found, so they've found things that are extinct, but they found things that look like squirrels, possums, Tasmanian devils, hedgehogs, shrews, beavers, primates, duck-billed platypus. He actually said in his book that he didn't know how close these mammals are to the modern forms because he wasn't able to see them. He's read research papers about these things, and you can go online, and I've done the same thing, but they're not displayed in modern museums.
Okay, so they only make it as far as the research papers by evolutionary paleontologists, obviously, who dig these things up.
Right.
And they never get to the public arena.
Well, that's a kind of a strange thing, seeing
Interesting.
how many have been found. Right?
Elsewhere he says this: few are aware of the great number of mammal species found with dinosaurs. Paleontologists have found 432 mammal species in the dinosaur layers, almost as many as the number of dinosaur species. That's amazing. These include nearly 100 complete mammal skeletons. But where are these fossils? He visited 60 museums, but didn't see a single complete mammal skeleton from the dinosaur layers displayed at any of the museums.
Right. So they found them. They found them in dinosaur layers. They should be on display in museums, because if you're going to a museum and they're showing you that, okay, this is what lived at this time. This is what the land was like and what was living at the time.
Did modern types of fish coexist with dinosaurs, plesiosaurs, and mosasaurs? Paleontologists at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science found this fossil shark tooth in a dinosaur rock layer. The similarities between this tooth and a modern goblin shark are undeniable. Dr. Werner questioned why this fossil was given a completely different genus name. Dr. Werner found many more examples of modern fish found with dinosaurs. This modern coelacanth looks a lot like this fossil at the Harvard Museum. But once again, the fossil was assigned to a completely different genus and species. Angel sharks live in the oceans today. This fossil angel shark was found with a dinosaur in Germany. Port Jackson sharks reside in the South Pacific. This fossil shark on display at the Carnegie Museum was found in a dinosaur layer. Guitarfish live off the coast of California. This fossil guitarfish was found with a dinosaur, Compsognathus. Herring live in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This fossil herring was found in a Cretaceous layer in Lebanon. Along with this fossil eel. This bowfin on display at the Milwaukee Public Museum was found near a T-Rex at Hell Creek, Montana. When compared to the living bowfin, they look similar, except for the colors and skin pattern added by the artist. Flounder have been found in dinosaur rock layers, but these and other common fish are rarely exhibited in museums.
Sturgeon and paddlefish and alligator gar are forms that have been found in association with dinosaurs.
But certainly the stingrays went through unaffected, the chimerids, many of the bony fishes, things like the salmon, the salmoniforms, they've gone through unaffected, and today they give us a bounty of some of the best food we can eat.
Scientists have also found fossils of modern jawless fish, such as lamprey and hagfish. And according to evolution experts, they look almost unchanged from the modern forms. Again, these fossils are rarely, if ever, displayed.
He's found modern frogs, salamanders have been found in dinosaur dig sites. All of today's reptile groups have been found in the dinosaur layers, and they look the same or similar to modern forms. So he's found snakes like boa constrictors, lizards, ground lizards, gliding lizards, turtles, box turtles, and soft-shelled turtles, things like alligators and crocodiles, etc. And they look like their modern counterparts. And by the way, just people think of the animals that are moving around, but plants, not just the animals. In the dinosaur rock layers, he found fossils from every major plant division living today, including flowering plants, ginkgos, cone trees, moss, vascular mosses, ferns, fossil sequoias, magnolias, dogwoods, poplars, ferns, horsetails. They've all been found at dinosaur dig sites. I know when you go to the Tyrrell Museum today in Alberta, in Canada, a world-class dinosaur museum, and you walk in, and one of the first displays, of course, you walk into the main area, and there's this family of tyrannosaurs, and they're in a pine forest. And I remember seeing that because I was there twice, and the first time they didn't have that exhibit. And when I saw the exhibit, that was one of the first things I said, "Oh wow, they're in a pine forest now." So they're recognizing, because when I was growing up, you always pictured it in some jungle or some land before time.
We had an article in our Creation magazine a few years back on grasses. There have been grass, the digested remains of grasses, about 5 different types of grasses found in the fossilized dinosaur dung. Coprolite it's called.
Yeah.
And there was grasses. I mean,
and why we did that episode is because at one time evolution said, well, there was no grass around
yes,
at the time.
woe
of the
betide any illustrator that would have that would have dinosaurs walking around on grassy plains. But grasses were around at the time of the dinosaur.
Okay, so let's recap here. What do these living fossils tell us? Well, one, just because we don't find animals fossilized together doesn't mean that they never lived together, i.e. coelacanths and humans, or humans and dinosaurs, etc. Many animals show very little evolution over millions of years. This stasis baffles evolutionists. It doesn't fit with what they would expect to find. Environments would change. They would expect that to drive evolution. And number 3, scientists find both extinct animals, like dinosaurs, found with modern animals. This is expected based on biblical history. Everything got buried in a great flood. You'd expect to find all those things buried together.
Yeah.
Paleontologists are saying, acknowledging, Darwin was wrong about this. We still don't find these transitional forms. And then some people will say, oh, yes, we have found those transitional forms. And that's really another topic. But my colleague Chris Roop and I are about ready to publish a book called Contested Bones. And we show that, no, the transitional forms that are claimed to be transitional forms don't hold up to scrutiny. Specifically when we look at the bones, supposed transitional bones between ape and man. And so there's abundant evidence, and even within the field of paleoanthropology, all the bones are contested, and hence the title of our book. And we've also looked very carefully at Tiktaalik, which is one of the main claims of a transitional form. And Tiktaalik is not a transitional form to a land animal. It was a bottom-dwelling fish with a morphology very, very similar to bottom-dwelling fish today. There's no evidence that it could crawl up onto the land.
Well, some evolutionists do understand this issue. Ernst Mayers was the greatest living evolutionist of the 20th century, professor at Harvard University. And he said the fossil record of the earliest plants is very poor. Fossils of mosses, generally considered the most primitive of the living land plants, have been around from the Devonian period, but surely they existed earlier but did not fossilize. So he's saying the earliest mosses are found in the Devonian, but they had to have evolved before that. And so he says, even though we don't have any fossil mosses down lower, they had to have evolved then because the theory of evolution requires it. He's just using the absence of evidence when it supports his view and ignoring it when it doesn't.
So I leave you with this. Stephen Hawking was interviewed by The Guardian. And he said, heaven is a fairy story for people afraid of the dark. I was asked to comment. I did. Atheism is a fairy story for people afraid of the light. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.